Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review for To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Moniquill Blackgoose. This is the first book in a YA fantasy series. I don't know how many books are going to be in this series. I hope so many. And it's following our main character of Anuse, and she is an indigenous woman. Again, this is a fantasy world, so the indigeneity is like probably North American indigenous, but again, it's not our world. And in this world there are dragons, but dragons are heavily controlled by the colonizing force in this world. So she discovers a dragon. Her people used to have dragons. She discovers a dragon. Dragons bond to the people that discover them, the whole dragon bond thing. And she ends up, because of the rules of the land, having to go to essentially like a boarding school for dragon riders and dragon tamers and things that is run by the colonizing force in order to learn and like tame her dragon. And she agrees to do this, but she also wants to bring home this knowledge to help her people, because dragons in this world are able to like create things, and like their breath can obviously damage people in the same way that we think of dragons, but they can also like have this creation force with them. So she ends up going away to school and everything takes off from there. So this is a book I read a while ago, but decided that I have to do a video review on it that is available to the public. If you want more of my reviews, I have been doing audio reviews of all the books that I read that I don't do videos for over on my Patreon, so I will link that down below if you're interested in checking that out and getting access to that. But I was like, I need more people to read this book. It is one of my favorite books of the year so far, and we did talk about it in the House Alt Book Club, which I will link on the screens for more in-depth thoughts, but this is a book that needs to be more popular, especially since it's a dragon book. But let me just get into it. First off, let me talk about the world building. So the world building with this book is that it's a fantasy world, but it's definitely heavily inspired by our world. So there are names that you're like, I know what that name is, right? So like there's like the English and things where you're like, okay, English, but I think actually they're slightly more German. Like the author is taking a bunch of different influences and wrapping them up. Like there are definitely tales and things from different parts of the world that we would be able to recognize as like influenced by our history and things. So something I really liked about the world building in this is that as Anuse is meeting new people, there's a storytelling element where characters will give some kind of story and some kind of mythology from their part of the world, and that is used as sort of like a segue and an introduction to them in a lot of ways. So there's this like oral storytelling component to it, which I really liked and was like very sweet. And so you have some like Norse mythology type things coming in. Anuse shares some things. So you have this like oral tradition element and the ways that she like is introduced to people, and she like asks people for their stories. And I will get to that when it comes to her and her characterization, because I love her as a character. But the way that we learn about all of that and like all the different parts of the world is very cool, because we only are really exposed to like one small part as far as like her people and then the school. The school is also like kind of interesting. I'm not a super huge boarding school fan in general, but there is something very nostalgic about that because of the very famous boarding school books that a lot of us read as kids. So having that element of like they're in school, there's classes, there's different things being learned in classes, there's different professors that have opinions about them. That feels so nostalgic and like safe in a way that made the book feel at times cozy, even though there are things that are higher stakes happening in this book than there would be in like a traditional cozy fantasy, right? Because the whole point of cozy fantasy for a lot of people is that it's very low stakes. There are serious things happening here with like xenophobia and racism and colonization and things. And then you have this like element that feels very like safe and contained. And I think that that balance with like the world and things was really nice. Next, I'm gonna talk about our characters. Anuse, love of my life. Something that I really like about this is Anuse could have totally been written as your normal YA protagonist, which like it's very common, and it's very common in people like discovering themselves where they're going to this new place and maybe they're trying to fit in, or they're getting in lots of fights with people, or they're having to like struggle with this like assimilating to the culture versus fighting it versus whatever. Anuse does none of that. She just is like, I know who I am and I know what's right, and I'm not even gonna really fight you on it. Like I'm gonna tell you you're wrong, but like I am just gonna stay very firm and fast in who I am. And it's so nice. She's just such a breath of fresh air, because she comes into these situations where, you know, people will tell her like, oh, well, that's the way that we do it, you know, as far as like usually this like colonizing culture. And she's like, weird. You know, she's like, oh, that's odd. Like there are things involved with like homophobia is talked about, and she's like, yeah, my people don't do that, so like, or like different relationship styles, different ways that people view families and stuff, and she's like, okay, that's weird. And just not phased. Like, definitely sticks up for things that she thinks are wrong and is like, that's ridiculous. But she's just so like stable and steady in it, and I really appreciate that. And there are other characters that could totally also fall under similar tropes that I think the author is going to spin a little bit. So we have a character who is one of Anacus's friends who is very much trying to conform to the like sort of English society, but doesn't really want to. She's a dragon rider, but then she keeps saying things about like wanting to fit in with the popular people and wanting to fit in with high society and wanting to become a wife and all this stuff. And I think that's a person who she could like betray them or something, right? But I think that the author is going to make that so that thing doesn't happen, because that's the character that you always expect to like be the betraying one, right? The like snooty little like white girl who doesn't know any better, you know, like we've seen that, and I don't think that we're going to necessarily go that way. We might, but she is much more interesting. Like Anacus and her have this like dynamic where Anacus doesn't seem like she's necessarily like super teaching her everything, but she's also like, I'm gonna give you space to kind of grow. And she has like this whole cast of characters that are just like very enjoyable around her. She has 2 love interests that I don't think will be a love triangle. I think will be something else. And I love that. And we just have like different ways that even people relate to a colonizing force. So we have people that have like grown up within it. We have people who her brother has gone and been a part of like this main city for different reasons, and how he is like bringing his indigenous culture to this area. We have people who've tried to assimilate into it. We have people who are resisting it. We have people who are in sort of like an indentured servitude situation. So you explore all of these things and all of these themes through all of these characters. And there's also this like found family element, because they're this like sort of band of misfits that all find each other, and not even find each other. Anacus is like, you're my friends now. It's great. Lastly, we'll talk about the plot. I mentioned that it is this like cozy feeling while also having stakes. So there's obviously like Anacus faces a lot of discrimination and oppression by being in this school, but like I said, because of her personality, she just is like, So there's like stakes to that, and there's danger to that, but there's also this sense of like, everything is mostly going to work out for this girl, I think, because she's just great and perfect. Maybe that's just like me being like, she's perfect, nothing bad can happen. But that's truly how it feels sometimes. And like the ways in which she is shaping the world around her, and the ways in which she is taking things, again, from this colonizing force and bringing it back to her people, there are really cool elements of how her like indigenous culture and magic are tied into dragons in a way that she doesn't even know, and that was erased and that she's bringing back to her people, which is really cool. So I loved this book. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I am very hopeful that the rest of the series sort of grows with her, because I think she's like 15, 16, but she's considered a woman in like her culture, and I think that really influences how her personality is. And I'm really hopeful that the series will like really grow with her and be one of those series that like starts out as YA and kind of goes into adult. I would love this to be like a 5-book series. And this needs to be one of the popular dragon books. This is my final piece on this. I know that there's very popular dragon books that have smut in them, right? But like, this is so good and well written. And like, you can like your trashy little dragon books. I will allow it. I'm benevolent. But like, also read this. There's so many good dragon books coming out right now. And this is so good. This is a school that makes sense. Like, this is a school with like a system that makes sense. These are like relationship dynamics that make sense. No, there's no smut in it, but like there's good character dynamics and relationship building and stuff. So I want this to be as popular as the smutty dragon book. So do your thing. So comment below, let me know what you thought of To Shape a Dragon's Breath, or if you're going to read it because of this review. I would love that. I've gotten so many people that have read the other dragon book to read this because I'm like, this one's better. And they're all like, it is. It's not a competition. You can like both. I'm just saying read this one too. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.